Welcome to the Equipped Agronomy Podcast, where we bridge the gap between seeding equipment and agronomy. Presented to you by Bourgault Industries. My name is Curtis DeGoyer. I work as an agronomist here at Bourgault. And I have across the table for me, Mr. Jeff Strukoff.
Curtis, always a pleasure.
It is just a pleasure to see you sitting over there smiling away and just ready to take on this podcast. And
every time is a new adventure.
Yes. Well, we hope we can have a chat and bring some value to everybody out there listening. And that's going to be the goal for today.
I don't think people realize how spontaneous this podcast
one is.
Really is.
This one is going to be an interesting one. I hope something valuable comes from it. So, today, I look down my notes. Yep, don't have any.
He doesn't show me the notes.
There's always been a question coming up, and I've been, kind of going at it. It comes from different angles or different ways to go about it, but I think it'd be cool just to chat about, you got a piece of seeding equipment, right? And you've been using it for years. And, maybe it's time to upgrade because parts are failing or you want to get bigger. Why would a guy change the drill or the style of drill more so? I think the question today, the topic is going to be just around which opener style, which strategy might be the best on the farm, and why a person may want to go from one to another, or why maybe a person wouldn't. So I guess the point being is it worthwhile to make a change just to make a change? Are you missing something out there, right? All my neighbors are running this style. I'm running this style. Am I missing? Should I go to that? And I just want to touch on a little bit.
The only thing going through my head right now is 20 minutes is not long enough for this conversation.
It could be quite a big, it is a big topic, but I think we'll just kind of narrow it down into a few maybe things, and we can branch off from there if people want to call in or chat and obviously these conversations are happening at the dealership level already.
I think it's an interesting conversation because when you look at all the different opener styles, if you had a vested interest in picking one because of a company that you're representing, you'd obviously have some bias going one way. But in Bourgault's case, they pretty much have every style of opener. And you really do have a lot of research to back up each one. And each one of them has strengths and there are some limitations too. And you just have to identify that with guys, and you just have to have that conversation because there really isn't one size fits all. It's you could tailor it to whatever individuals are doing on their farm.
Which is exactly right. And that's, you nailed it. We've got a lot of options out there. And I know it's been said within Bourgault before, we've got a lot of options. We're not going to apologize for that, right? It would be so much simpler if we had one, right? One style, one thing. The salesman would sure appreciate that as far as, okay, what's out on trade, what's coming in. It's easy.
Yeah. Bourgault Builder would be pretty simple.
Bourgault Builder would be very simple. That's right. Yeah. Click here, done there. The size, whatever, done. But that's not the case because we are in a lot of different areas. And there are advantages to your point. There's advantages to certain styles and there's disadvantages. So I thought we could just touch on a few things. So I would say we'll start off with this one. Probably the most common configuration that we had, the one that kind of built up Bourgault in general, right, is a single knife, 3/4 inch opener with mid-row banders, right? So you're putting down your seed, maybe some starter in that seed run, and you're putting down your bulk of your fertilizer in the mid-row, either 5 inches away or 6 inches away, right? 10-inch spacing or 12-inch spacing. And actually the most common is 10-inch spacing.
Yes,
single knife,
with
banders,
that configuration, yeah.
With that configuration.
But you know what? For the first, I don't know how many years of that configuration's life, I don't think it was used for the best benefit that it offered because everyone put a little bit of seed place fertilizer, the maximum seed placed amount, and they just put nitrogen in the banders.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, where people started splitting phos and kind of utilizing that configuration to the best advantage.
And especially what we found in canola, right? We can put a little bit in the seed row, the rest out into the mid-row band, and then that way you can put down more phosphorus, but you don't necessarily have to pile it all in the seed row. And we've also found that, having it out in the bander, potentially a little bit deeper, a little bit further away, a little bit later take up, from that bander, especially in canola, could be really beneficial. And we've seen that.
Deeper in the soil profile, moist soil, longer, better access.
Dual feeding sites. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to it.
So we've got this single knife banders that have been out there, and a lot of them are out there being used.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now this question I would say comes up, probably the most common one. So we introduced our dual knife opener, the PLDS, Paralink Dual Shank, and now we've got our PLDX, Dual Extreme, just the latest and greatest, better contouring.
A 1-to-1 version of the original.
Yeah, of
opener.
a dual knife.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just stick with the dual knife concept, right? So now guys are out there, they're growing crops, and they're looking over the fence, and they're like, hey, here's this dual knife, whether it's Borgo or whether it's a competitor, and they're thinking, hey, are we missing something over there? You know, at certain times of the year, the crop looks pretty darn good, right? And it's like, hey, are we lagging behind with this single knife and banders? Okay, should we be going to this? And I think that, you know, just to change in the sake of making a change, sometimes that's good. You don't want to just, you know, there's kind of two ways to go about it, right? It's the two sayings are, you know, why are you doing that? Because I've always done that, right? That's almost the negative way of keep on what you're doing. But you know what? You don't, you know, don't break what's working either, right? Like that's kind of the other thing, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if it's working for you. So I guess the one that I wanted to bring up on this is, okay, so why are we going to make that change? What are you going after? What are you trying to pinpoint in your fertilizer strategy or in your whole seeding procedure? What are we going to change, and how can you make it better by totally going away from maybe what you have been doing? And that's it might be the best thing. So for example, so there's guys up in the Northeast, right, that are using a lot of anhydrous.
Northeast part of Saskatchewan. Thank you
on that part of it. There's places all over where people are using anhydrous. We'll say anhydrous in general. So lots of times you try to get that on in the fall, and then come springtime, then you're just seeding, right? You're putting down starter, you're putting it in the seed row, lock up your mid-row banders, right? If you had them on. But then you're kind of limited to how much you can put in the seed row. Okay. Well, now we go to a dual knife, right? So you've got your anhydrous down. Now in a dual knife situation, you can put down the seed on its own, and you can put all your starter in the side band.
Yeah.
Right? Now all of a sudden that is like, well, you're no longer handcuffed, right? Because otherwise you could drop down your banders and you could put some out there, which some guys do. And but a lot of times guys want to lock those up. And so they limit
less
themselves.
horsepower, there's all sorts of different things, but they're not using the drill to the full potential that it has by locking the banders up. So, but if you do get nitrogen out of the equation altogether because you've banded it or floated it in the fall, a dual knife is a pretty sweet system.
System. Okay, so
but we have found with that drill that nitrogen does have an impact. If you put all your fertilizer down that fertilizer knife in a dual knife.
And system. I was just going to come back to that. So you're out there, you've been using a single knife with banders, anhydrous or non-anhydrous, just you're up over, 120, 30, 140, 150 plus pounds of N. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, these silly mid-row banders, I've been dragging along. Do they really do anything? I'm going to a dual knife. Well, we have found that it can hurt your sensitive crops like canola, right?
Oh, yeah.
And not necessarily everywhere. Like, for example, here in St. Brew, we've got looking down this one, we've got this 9-year average, right? We've got the ability to put in different places, nitrogen in the sideband or nitrogen in the mid-row, the same opener, right? We can just lock it up and down. And we can see our plant stands go down on a 9-year average, go down by about 17% when we have that N in. Some years it's more, way more, and some years it's not as much.
Yeah, but on average. Yeah.
But on average, okay. And there are other areas, like if this is St. Brew, gray wooded soil, if we go up to Melfort, only 15 minutes away to that soil zone, kind of different change, maybe 20. I've done this trial on a farm there where I've had the N in the sideband and in the mid row, and like last year wasn't super wet spring by any means.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah, no. And really didn't see that big differentiation there, right? A little bit heavier soil could buffer it out a little bit better. So again, it comes back to, what are you trying to change with that? So if it's been working, you've been putting on that N, and you've been getting the yields that you want, right? And it's been good, right? All of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I think maybe in June, maybe that dual knife, some years, maybe it can look a little bit better, right? And whether it's art or whoever's, right? Oh, it looks a little better. So are you going to go to that?
Better visually, better statistically, better
it just looks better.
That's the thing.
It just looks better. Oh, it looks more lush. And it's like, you know what? We've seen that.
Well, you get a dual knife and it cleans the furrow out a little bit, and it's a blacker look in the furrow. So you get better contrast between whatever plant is growing and the ground. Single knife and banders, well, it usually get a little bit more trash in the furrow.
Yeah.
But statistically, like if you go out and count, the majority of the time they're exactly the same. It's just a visual appearance that's different.
There could be differences as far as plant development, right? If
that's
you're
true
not
too.
burnt down, if you're not hurting the roots and they're actually getting end closer, I mean, it's not rocket science, it's closer. And if it's not hurting and there's good moisture to buffer it out, good soil, whatever, then the crop can look bigger. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh yeah, that looks better. But then, the guys I talk to, and it's just like, and how to yield, right? And like, that's always the big thing. And it's so hard to compare when it's, against a neighbor or different land. And, who knows what, everybody lies to each other out there. The neighbors lie to each other, like, whether you mean to or not. It's like, oh, this is exactly what I put down. And then you remember after that conversation a few years later, you're like, oh yeah, but I did put manure down there like 5 years ago. Oh yeah, that's maybe, I won't tell them that. Yeah. Right? Like you just never get the full story.
That's a nice thing about the trials though. You get replicated trials and they're all in the same area they're right there, and you can draw that comparison.
And we've seen that before, right? In both canola and in wheat where, man, that scraggly, it's kind of like that I don't know what commercial is, that old dog, and just scraggly little thing, and all of a sudden it produces, right? Like the crop doesn't maybe look as pretty in June, but then it's in our highest yields every year kind of thing, right? And on average on 9 years, it's still up there. And I think that's always just something to consider, right? Like if something's been working for you.
Well, looking at the numbers, Curtis, which like if you compared single knife mid-row banders to dual knife on its own, and then the new configure where there's dual knife with mid-row banders, the Trimax version. Mm-hmm. What are the averages?
Like as far as yields?
Yeah, like at the end of the day, on 9 years, you've probably compiled that.
Well, yeah. I mean, canola wise, we're 56.1 with the single knife and banders, dual knife with mid-row, so the Trimax 55.2. And then a dual knife, just all the nitrogen in the sideband, we're down to, 54.5. And that's got the lowest plant stand on that one.
So nitrogen plays a factor and it lowers the plant stand.
It definitely does that,
with the dual knife.
In wheat, 72.3 to the Trimax 71.3 to the dual knife 68.9 kind of thing. That's the same brew. And so we've got these, we do have that. And of course it's going to be different in different areas. But yeah, that's what we've seen, 9 years average here. So I guess, what are we using on the farm though? If we're looking at this, we should be using a single knife with banders. Well, we're not. We're using a Trimax, right? It's like, but why are we doing that?
You can make any piece of equipment shine. You just have to know what you're doing and know how to tweak it and get
the biggest thing with that
firing
is
on all cylinders kind of thing.
In canola with that one, right? You cut down your seeding rate considerably to make that system work for us. Like we're down to under 3 pounds because we know we're not going to kill off canola seed. Yeah. So that's where the payback is on that one.
Yeah.
On the wheat side of things, we're still playing around with some different things with it. Some different nitrogen placement, maybe some different phos placement. I wouldn't say we've got that thing tuned right up. So the other thing
on cereals, I like the fact, like with a single knife, at least the 10-inch spacing is kind of the norm, and narrower row spacing with a single knife is really nice with cereals.
And that's one thing on these 9-year averages that I don't think is that we might have to change up. Right? Maybe we'll get to 10 years. We'll do one more year like this. But the dual knives on 12-inch and that single knife and banders is on 10.
Yeah.
Canola, we've done the trials. I don't think it makes a big difference when it comes. I know it doesn't make a difference on the
row spacing.
With row spacing. Yeah. On the wheat, though, that one, you can make an argument that this little bump in yield here is just purely due to
row spacing.
Yeah. Which brings up a whole nother conversation. And I think it's an important one because I've been having it more and more with guys that are, going from a single knife with banders is typically 10-inch spacing. And then they're looking at a dual knife for whatever, a few different reasons. They maybe they want that pop-up, right? Mm-hmm. They can see that. They want it. That's what that's a good reason. Okay, fair enough. But now they're like, do we have to go to 12 though? Mm-hmm. And our drill is on 10-inch.
The dual knife, yeah.
The dual knife is on at the farm here is on 10-inch spacing, and that's honestly what I've been telling guys who ask me, right? What do you think about a 10-inch dual knife? I think it's very doable. Very doable.
As long as you can manage your straw.
Yes.
And get it to clear in the spring. That's all that matters.
Traditionally, you wanted trash does not flow through a dual knife. Anybody's dual knife near as good as a single knife with batters.
Yeah.
I know that. We know that. We've seen it. Guys have told us that. But the old choppers, right? I would say up to 10 years ago, right? It was like combines. You had to go to 12-inch on the dual knife because you just couldn't get that good even spread. You couldn't get the straw chop good enough. You couldn't, get a consistent cut across the field on stubble height. Now we got Contour Buddy or Buddy Max or whatever it's called. And I think that there's just a lot of things that came into play here now where a 10-inch dual knife is not near the risk like it used to be for getting through trash. And when it comes down to benefits, right, of weed competition, and also with a dual knife, if you don't have that higher concentration of nitrogen that close, you could, help yourself in that way a little bit better. What I mean by that is, if you're putting down 120 pounds of N on a 12-inch space versus a 10, you're 20% higher concentrated in that band, which is probably going to be more toxic towards your seed. And you're probably going to have a little bit higher mortality.
Yeah.
Right. And we've seen that on row spacing in general. So, to say, okay, if we're going to make this change, if you got to go from 10-inch single knife to banders to a 12-inch dual knife, I wouldn't say that's entirely in stone, right? Yeah. Actually, one guy brought it up. Well, don't you have to sign a waiver about going to a 10-inch dual knife? And thing comes up and says, just so you know,
you're aware.
And I think that's more than anything. Like, it's just, you've talked about trash management in general. So yeah, I think that's kind of neat. So then you've already touched on, the Trimax then version of this is a dual knife with mid-row banders, the latest and greatest out there. Is that what everybody should go to?
It's got a lot of complexity built into it.
Not necessarily, right? Like, and just to think, it's got to be it's the best. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of cool things, a lot of flexibility with it. You can lock up the banders, and you can put fertility wherever you want. It does make it does make some agronomists drool out there, but it's not for everybody because I think that, like you said, there's complexity as far as there's lots of hoses running around, right? It's not like it's
but the permutations and combinations that you can throw together with seeding rates, fertilizer placement, But it's mind blowing the different things that you can do.
But for the most part, you're going to put the seed on its own. You're going to put the starter in the side band. You're going to put the bulk of N out in the mid row. Like that's pretty much
the most important thing with that drill is to actually get comfortable with the fact that you have to get your head wrapped around that you have to seed less canola. Yes. Like 3 pounds to the acre is like the top end. Well, I guess depending on seed size, but if you want to end up with 5.5 plants per square foot, you're going to have to reduce your seeding rate by 17 to 20%. And that from what you normally would do. And it's like I've had this conversation with the guys. It's difficult for them to like it's kind of gut wrenching because your whole season is riding on the fact that you're going to go out there and man, am I going to screw my whole farm up by doing this? But you know what? You start and you do an 80 acre piece on a quarter and you look at it and you're like, geez, that looks pretty good. And then maybe you expand it. Cause I know like you and I, we looked at the trials and we're like, well, this is what we're finding. We should do this on the farm. And even for the two of us it was an easy decision to do that. But then after we did it, it's like, oh, this is awesome.
You've got to utilize the equipment to its full amount. Otherwise you're not going to get the value out of it.
That's right.
Yeah. And in some cases, a dual knife, whether it's Trimax or whether it's on its own, some guys are growing big crops and you know what? They got lots of trash to get through. Or heavy clays. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work as good in some of these areas, right? Mm-hmm. Really heavy clays, right? Where it's kind of chunking out. So yeah, there's I don't know if we answered any questions or anything, but just, some things to consider or even think about, what, if this is working for me, it's not the worst thing in the world to say, let's just keep working with this. There's maybe some other things that are changing, some different technology that can be utilized, but the functionality of, the main system kind of stay the same. So here's another one. I get asked this every now and then. This creeps up in different areas, is a disc drill. And we have disc drills. We have multiple different disc drills. We had a Jim on the other day, and we were chatting about different kinds of disc drills. But in general, where would a guy use a disc drill? Why would you choose a disc drill over a hoe drill? And I think in Western Canada, far and large, a hoe drill is our most common, right? I mean, there's pockets in Manitoba, and there's pockets in kind of a northwest Saskatchewan where there's a certain disc drill out there that's working with us. But hoe drills, right? And the biggest reason, what's the biggest reason why everyone doesn't wear a disc drill here for those listening?
For here?
Yeah. Why aren't we all wearing
a hoe drill? Gives you a black furrow. And when you start seeding on May the 1st to the 5th, and it's cold and the overnight temperatures are getting quite low, borderline freezing, that black furrow absorbs more heat during the day and tends to give it off at night, and it just keeps things moving along. Where a disc drill, it just takes a little bit longer for the soil to warm up under the stubble, is primarily what I've seen. But disc drills work fantastic when it's wet. I never thought that or knew that, but actually guys have had really good luck where, they get going sooner after rain with the disc drill. I think going a little bit earlier in the spring because they just seem to work. I think that retaining wheel on the side of the disc drills actually does a really good job in cleaning out. They don't plug anymore like they used to back in the day. But I think primarily just having a black furrow is important if you're in these northern areas. Yeah. So like if you're south of Highway 16 in Saskatchewan, there's no reason why you couldn't make a disc drill work, I don't think. So,
there's definitely disc drills running around.
Yeah, a little bit more moving parts.
Yep. They're a little bit more complex. I mean, we have a lot of guys run banders, which is a disc up here, right? But having a full set of openers is a little bit different animal.
Seed placement's tough to beat with a disc drill.
As long as you can get it over the hairpinning. So hairpinning, because that's the other problem in our conditions is if, typically we're cold, but we're also damp in the spring.
Yeah.
Like we got snow and we're trying to go sometimes through the snow. So it's going to be a little soggy out. And so if you can't cut through that trash, you can't get that seed into the soil. Now it's sitting on that trash, right? And if anyone's seen hairpinning before, it sucks because your seed's there. It's right there. But you pull up the straw and it bloop, comes out, did not grow. Yeah. And now you're not very happy with that. So then we do have this anti-hairpin disc, and that's the one I kind of referred to in the Northwest Saskatchewan, like a disc wing scraper. And that goal with that is put fertilizer down and then put the seed up onto the side there. And then it's not in that disc where it hairpins. So it should be good. And I know we've had guys try that system out because they do have lots of trash. Like a disc drill will go through trash. You won't plug up like ever. Like you'll just roll right through. But the problem is, what's the job it's doing?
That disc wing scraper does give you a little bit of a blocker furrow too, though.
It does. It looks more like, like a hoe drill.
It's almost like a hoe drill, yeah.
Right? And so the other thing with the disc drills is you can typically go faster. With that one, you really can't because you can start to throw on. Yeah. And again, it depends on different things. But I know I've seen guys get into that disc drill. They want to change it up, right? They had a single knife with banders and they have lots of trash. They're trying to get through more trash. Okay, we're going to go to this style. And a couple of years trying to make it work. Maybe they just couldn't get quite underneath the trash or, it just didn't, it kind of rode up every now and then. They just didn't get that good seed placement that they wanted, right? And then they go back to a single knife with banders. Not saying you can't try things, but there are, definitely some things to watch out for. And that one is definitely one. And to your point about, if it looks like a hoe drill at the end afterwards, you drop down south, like you said, and, let's say southern Canada, northern states, or actually all through the states where they're trying to conserve more moisture. Well, all of a sudden you don't want a big, thick furrow, right? You don't want to move a lot of soil.
Exactly.
So, you go back to a low disturbance scraper disc. And in these areas here where you do want it a little bit blacker furrow, we'll just use a hoe drill then because it's easier.
Yeah.
Right. So there are examples of disc drills where guys are using them successfully in hoe drill areas, but they're not super common. Right. And it's not like you can't try it or you don't want to go after something like that, but make sure the reasons that you're doing it, I guess at the end of the day, are thought out. And there's a certain situation you're trying to correct with what you currently have. And I think maybe that's kind of my watch out is all what I was kind of thinking of. But what else do we miss? What else do we got out there for cedars? We got different styles, a couple different single knives, a couple different dual knives, a couple different discs, single shoot, double shoot, triple shoot.
Planter.
Do you have a planter? Didn't talk about the planter too much.
Let's not.
Okay. It works. It works great. If you're going to singulate, you want a big planter, apply all your fertility down in one pass in corn. Man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think we can do a lot of different other things with canola without having complexity of a singulation.
Well, we've kind of proven that it's not necessarily in canola, but it does definitely have an agronomic benefit in corn and sunflower and a few other things.
Potentially faba bean. I don't know.
We should try that actually.
Well, that would be cool. But okay, we're going to kind of just end that conversation there, unless there's something else, anything else.
No, I just would hope that when people are considering, potentially changing drills, they would actually have a conversation either with their dealer rep or somebody,
Which I'm sure they are now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I'm pretty sure everyone does, but I had no idea how much of an emotional attachment you get to a certain seating system and comfort level. You've had it for several years, you know how to make it work and everything like that. And then changing to a different style, it's a big step sometimes. So,
and I think we get that, right?
Yeah.
We understand. And that's why we do a lot of
talking to a whole bunch of different people about it.
Not
is
a bad thing
not
at
a
all.
bad thing at all. No.
Yeah. But at the end of the day though, if something's working, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
Right? Like, yes, equipment, like I said, it starts to fatigue or, there's certain reasons to upgrade, but then the style wise, maybe that doesn't need to change. Right. And just, you get a little bit more footage or bigger or the same. Anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up and chat with you today about. So.
Well, that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. Well, I hope it spurred on some thought. And if there is questions that guys want to call, I'm more than happy to chat about agronomy and different options that we got out there if they're looking at something. So we'll leave her there.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeff.
Have a great day, Curtis.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.